Welcome to Cave to the Cross Apologetics. I'm Tony.
I'm Patrick.
And today we're continuing our discussion from Jason Lyle's book, Keeping Faith in the Age of Reason.
Mm-hmm. And we're on Chapter 2. We incorrectly told you Chapter 3's name last video, but this one is Name, Places, and Genealogies that we're going to figure out if the Bible is wrong in all these names and numbers. And
so did we get the name wrong last?
We got the name of the chapter wrong. Good thing we're not infallible. Yeah.
All right. So he says in this section we're going to examine claims that the Bible confuses names of people or places, or that it incorrectly reports the genealogical relationship between particular persons, right? So there's a confusion. Hey, the Bible messed it up. It says this was the name, but really this was the name. Which was the real name? That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll just kind of dive right in here and look at the first one. This one has to do with Abiathar. And the issue here is, was Abiathar the father or the son of Ahimelech, right? 1 Samuel 22:20 and 23:6 teach that Abiathar was the son of Ahimelech, but 2 Samuel 8:17 and 1 Chronicles 8:18-16 and others teach that Abiathar was the father. So which is it? Was he father or son?
Yeah.
Or, or something else?
Well, 1 Samuel and 1 Chronicles do sometimes overlap, I guess, historically. Sometimes.
Right.
But not all the time.
Right.
And so here...
More closely, I think, probably Chronicles and Kings overlap more.
Yeah. But here, it's two different people at two different times, two different places, people with the same name.
Oh, is that what's going on?
Yeah. So, believe it or not, even though there were fewer people back then, people still named people after other people, especially in the same family.
Yeah, like their father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we do today.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We don't claim that, junior, senior, no, those are clearly the same person. No, we clearly distinguish them because it's always a moniker, like a junior or senior that separates, or a third or fourth or however many.
Yeah.
And here it's talking about the son of someone, or if they're referring back to kind of a important person that they can also talk about being in that same line. A lot of them, this one's a good one to start out with, because this one kind of talks about, in general, a majority of the ones that you're going to find in the chapter.
Right. Yeah, he calls this one the equivocation fallacy, which means the critic is using the words, in this case the names, in two different ways because it's talking about two different persons. Abiathar's father was named Ahimelech, and surprise, surprise, Abiathar's son was also named Ahimelech, right? So was Abiathar the father or the son of Ahimelech?
Right.
Well, we can say yes.
Right. Yeah. Yes, depending on who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, or however you pronounce that. I am not a native Old Hebrew talker, but is 1 Samuel 22:11, and he lived during the reign of King Saul and was killed by Saul before David became king. But then Ahimelech, son of Abiathar, served as priest during the time that David was king over Israel, and that's in 2 Samuel 8:15 and 17.
Right.
So two different people, same name,
two
different times.
Yeah.
So that's a big distinction that would even probably be reflected in their name. It's always kind of like Ben Judah. It's always Ben is son of Judah, or whoever the father moniker is.
Okay, so that clears that up, right? Two different people.
Yeah. Father
and son. Next one that we want to look at is this one. Who was Achan's father? Right? Joshua 1:7 says that his father was Carmi, and Joshua 7:1, right, says that his father was Carmi. And Joshua 7:24 and 22:20 says it was Zerai. So which one was it?
Right. This kind of encompasses the other ones that you'll find in this chapter. It's bifurcation fallacy, semantic range fallacy are the two main fallacies. His immediate father in Joshua 7:1 is Carmi, but he has a more distant father, or we would call it a grandfather, great-grandfather, going back along the patriarchal lines, was Zerah. And that's in Joshua 7:1 that talks about that there. And also in the 7:24 and 22:20, the Hebrew word for father or son, but here it's father, literally means this male ancestor. So context is what's going to provide you the best rendition of that word. So if here it's in 7:1, it talks about being the son of Carmi, but he's also the son of Zerah, which it says for Achan, the son of Carmi, son of Zabdi, son of Zerah of the tribe of Judah. So it's tracing back. I mean, he's not three sons here. He's got
three
one,
people's sons.
He's got one
right?
father.
Yeah.
But on the other side, what it could have been also is, especially in the culture of the Hebrews, you have a legal father and you have a biological father. Sometimes when the biological father dies, a heir
brother.
along that line, a brother,
Often,
usually has the responsibility for taking the other child in. So you could have that clarification. However, here, Zerah is kind of a popular figure. It's kind of doing a touchstone too. And so, yes, he's both a father to Carmi is a father to Achan, but then he's also has a grandfather named Zerah.
Yeah. All right. So bifurcation is, the issue is either it's this or that. It can't be both. Well, it is both this time. Right?
I think this book is, especially when we get a little bit farther on and we get more New Testament examples, plus the some of the other ones that you and I have read, especially Counterpoint series. Knowing the Greek or finding someone who knows the Greek that can talk about what the original language says literally and then provide you a better context. And so here we're dealing with a lot more Hebrew, and the fact that most of these examples in this chapter are Hebrew show a lack of understanding of the original language and the historical context that's done here. It's the attempt for critics to be completely westernized and expect Eastern writers to write in
a Western way. Yeah.
Especially then translating, having whatever translation that they're reading from be a Western read one.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, what's the next one here?
Let's see. The next one is number 63. So here we're going into the New Testament.
All right.
So what were the names of the apostles? And here, oh man, just Matthew and Mark and Luke do not agree. So here you have the
with Acts even. Acts 1, 1:13.
The synoptic gospels just, even though they're all similar and they all come from the same source and all Q and all the weird type of stuff that we just can't say, well, Mark wrote and then Matthew wrote and then Luke wrote, which seems to be kind of the progression. Nope, they had no interaction with each other, and they just were lackadaisical with the people that they were living with and knew at the time.
That's right.
So you have to assume then that the Gospels were written much, much later, and even though it seems to be very historically accurate, these details just we don't really care about it, even though you're not too far divorced from if you believe in a late dating of the Gospels.
Well, so the problem there is a lot of the details they did get right. I mean, very specific details, right? But then how could they miss something as big as who the apostles were? So what's the problem here? Well, a failure to read the text carefully, and he says also the bifurcation fallacy, right?
Right.
And also the issue here is failing to realize that some surprise, surprise, have more than one name.
Yeah, even though within the Gospels themselves, you have the change of some people's names.
Right.
Peter
Right.
being the biggest example,
Yeah.
probably.
Matthew and Levi, right?
Yeah.
It's the same person,
Right.
different names, that kind of
Right.
stuff, right?
And why? It's because Levi would be the Hebrew name because he's a Jew living in Rome or in Israel.
Right.
And then Romans come in. Well, you need to assimilate to Roman rule, and then Matthew is the Greek name.
Yeah.
You can even have a third name. You can even have a Latin name on top of that.
So the apostles then, who are they? Well, he lists them here. The apostles are Peter, also named Simon, right? Andrew, it's Peter's brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John, the brother of James, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, also known as Levi, Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, also called Judas Lebus, Simon the Canaanite, also called Zelotes, and Judas Iscariot. So those are the
Right. And look at the ones. So Andrew is Peter's brother, so there might have been other Andrews that are hanging around the writers at the time, so they're or had maybe weren't in the 12, but maybe in the 50 or the wider circle. So these all have kind of different connotations. So Peter's brother, also known as Levi, so a change in name there from, like we said, Matthew being the more Greek name, son of Alphaeus, so referring to a father figure. So there might have been different Jameses. James didn't have a brother. That James didn't have a brother. So you're having more specificity there by referring to a father figure.
And he points out that all three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all agree with this list that we listed here. The only issue then is Acts 1:13. But notice he says that it also lists all of these except for
Judas Iscariot.
Yeah,
because
who
there's two
was
Jews.
Understandably omitted, right? Since he, his the Acts doesn't record the events, that it starts after Judas was dead, and betrayed, and committed suicide. So they're consistent here. It's just different names are used for the same person
And recorded at different times.
Yeah.
That's why Judas isn't there.
All right. Well, let's jump back to the Old Testament specifically. Let's get as old as we can in the book of Genesis. How about that?
Okay.
So this one is, who named Beersheba? Genesis 21:31 indicates that it was Abraham and Abimelech who named Beersheba. And Genesis 26:33 says it was Isaac who named Beersheba.
Yeah.
So who was it?
Yes. I mean, here it is. Yes. I mean, you have Abraham being the first one who went to Abimelech and dug the well and named the location Beersheba. But then when Isaac goes back, because Abraham was out gallivanting around saving Lot and meeting Melchizedek and saving the king. So here Isaac goes back to where the land of promise was, kind of in that area, not the full land that they would come to, because you got to go to Goshen and Egypt, be enslaved, wander the desert, and then finally Joshua helps lead the conquering Israel to take the land of flowing with milk and honey. So here again you have Isaac understanding the promise given to Abraham, and so he's reclaiming the land that was not abandoned but moved away from that Abraham first.
Right. So he rechristens the well with the same name that his father had given, right? And so that's really what we're getting, just a rechristening of the well by Isaac.
Yeah.
So who named it? You're right. Yes, they both did.
Right.
First Abraham and Abimelech, and then later Isaac, when he came back, he rechristened the well. So no issue there, no contradiction, no error, right, in that particular area. All right. Well, since we're jumping all around, we can jump back to the New Testament.
Yeah, and I think this is one that probably I don't know if people struggle with, but if you look at and here it is, where did Joseph and Mary live before Jesus' birth? The way that we kind of have situated in our minds when someone says, I'm from Detroit or New York City or Los Angeles. We understand, hey, here's the outline of the map, and here's the borough, and like, yeah, you can live within different points of, you know, the city, but here's the city.
Right.
But here you have a different geography than what we're used to. Cities aren't always in kind of one location. You can have miles between different cities that are still called the same city, and conquering armies come in and kind of distract everything too, because then you'll have, you know, the Romans call it something, and then the Jews will call it something else.
People called it something else. Yeah.
So we kind of I can see where confusion might come in, but calling it contradiction is not true.
Right.
So where did Joseph and Mary live before the birth? Luke 2 contradicts Matthew 2, 1 through 2, 11, 22, 23. And,
or does it? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So notice they lived in separately in several different places before the birth of Christ.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So they traveled to Bethlehem for the census,
Mhm.
right? But they also lived in. It was only that, you know. So Luke says they lived in Nazareth, but they traveled to Bethlehem,
Mhm.
right? So they lived in several different places, you know,
Right.
which is, you know, that. So where did they live? Well, it depends on when you're talking about,
Mhm.
right?
Right. So they lived separately before the birth. Traveled to Bethlehem. We know that old story. Can't find the inn, which is not really what we think of an inn. It's probably an ancestral home. Didn't have any room there because everybody's coming in for the census. We have to go there for Joseph because when Caesar called the census, you return to your father's homeland.
Right.
So
So it's going to where Joseph's homeland
Mhm.
was, his father's homeland.
So putting it in Bethlehem here is an odd coincidence we would call divine intervention, where out of the smallest city David comes, and out of the smallest city Jesus comes, and it's a fulfillment of prophecy that we look for the Messiah. And here it is, directed by pagan Romans, and Joseph and Mary return there. Then Christ is born. They Joseph gets a vision from the angels, and that it says, "Flee because you'll be caught up."
Mhm.
So they go to Egypt, live there for a bit, maybe a couple of years or so. King Herod dies sometime in that period. And then they go and settle in Nazareth, and that's why
right.
Jesus is called Jesus of Nazareth,
Right.
because that's
Right.
where he was originally from,
Right.
although not born there. So,
Yeah.
you could be born in Detroit, you can move to Chicago. You most likely refer to yourself as Chicagoan rather than a Detroit person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you grew up in Chicago,
Mhm.
right, you'd say, "Well, I'm from. Where are you from? Chicago."
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, but you were born in,
Mhm.
you know, yeah. So like, I was born in Chicago, but you know, we stayed there for a couple years, but I grew up in Michigan, you
Mhm.
know, in this area. So yeah. All right. Next one is this one. Where did Jesus cure the blind man? Where did he cure the blind man? Was it at Bethsaida rather,
Mhm.
as it says in Mark 8, or was it indeed the pool of Salome in John 8?
Yeah.
So, which one was it?
Right. Well, here,
Well, so we need the real question is, which blind man
right.
was it?
And he makes a really good point here. Is it wasn't just two blind people that he healed,
Or just one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did many,
Yeah.
and his miracles are attested to throughout the Gospels. It's not just these two people, or thought the critics think it's one person. So why not pull other people and say, oh, this one blind person is the same as, how he's got Matthew 9, 11, 12, 15, 20, Mark 8, Luke 4, 7, 18, John 9. So here, why do critics tend to harp on these two?
Yeah.
It doesn't really make sense, especially if you read them, because two different blind men healed in two different ways, told to do two different things at two different places.
Yeah. Yeah. So where did he cure the blind man? Well, he cured him in these two different places.
In Bethsaida
at
and
the
at the
very
pool of
least,
Siloam.
and probably many more in many other places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably it for this half. So we'll do another episode for this chapter that has a few more, not quite differences, because, like I said, a lot of them are this bifurcation fallacy or subset fallacy, semantic range fallacy, but
Or a failure to read the text carefully.
yeah, it's probably a lot of that.
Yeah.
So we'll come back next episode with part 2 of the chapter that deals with names, places, and genealogies.
All right. We'll see you next time.
All right.